do is talk about the struggles that people encounter when they try to get out of places like Uganda in making their refugee claims in Canada. There's also a series of issues around settlement that are, I think, quite important that I don't address here. My focus is on the refugee status determination process. And this is based on primary research that I conducted in Toronto and Vancouver in 2004 and 2005. It remains current in the sense that a lot of the analyses of adjudicators, the people who are assigned to decide these cases, we continue to see a lot of the same kind of thinking. I've kept abreast of new decisions and as well as media reports since I conducted the primary research. And I'm currently in the process of developing a doctoral dissertation that will do more primary research in this area. Let's see a second. And it's an honor to share a panel with Hassan and Adrian, both doing very courageous frontline work, and with Nancy, who's a very accomplished filmmaker. It's the first time I'm presenting this work outside of North America, actually.
PowerPoint is not yet working.
PowerPoint is not yet working,
I've encouraged Robert to just go ahead.
I'm going to go ahead. So let me just briefly talk about how LGBT identities fit into refugee law. And that is through the interpretation of the membership of a particular social group clause. And so legal interpretations of this clause in the 1990s in Canada and in other places, the United States, United Kingdom, Australia, there's a longer list of countries, interpreted this clause to include, and I'm quoting from UNHCR here, a group of persons who share a common characteristic, such as homosexuality or transgender identity, which is innate, unchangeable, or which is otherwise fundamental to identity, conscience, or the exercise of one's human rights. And another definition, a characteristic so fundamental to human dignity that the person should not be compelled to forsake it. And I try to make a case that it's this latter definition that I think leads to better interpretation. There are some drawbacks to the way that board members have, and by board member I mean member of the Immigration and Refugee Board in Canada. So these are the people who are assigned to adjudicate a claim. And part of the problem with them looking for an innate, unchangeable identity is that when there are transformations or differences in the way that different people identify, the way they experience their sexuality and gender identity, the authenticity of those identities is called into question. So what I want to try and do in this presentation is unpack a rather singular concept of gayness that is sort of a mental category in the minds of many board members. I have also seen more progressive kinds of decision making. I concentrate on some examples here and try to raise some of the problems that I see with them. One is that they are ethnocentric in the sense that they look at what North American gay male middle class identity is and project it onto the rest of the world. And as we know, there are many different ways to be gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans, intersex. There are unique issues and challenges around each individual's life, and the case that I'm trying to make here is that by creating a series of tests for gayness in the refugee determination process, the potential and, in many cases, reality of exclusion is what I've seen rather than protection. So I'm really trying to emphasize, get a PowerPoint any minute, the internal differentiation within this category. So gender, the experiences of men and women are in many cases very different. Gender identity, sexual orientation, so gay, lesbian, or bisexual. There's some great work by Sean Rehaig from York University on bisexual refugee claimants who have a lower rate of acceptance and are often not believed. The board members articulate skepticism that this is even a real identity. Other differences, class, so income and access to financial resources. In a lot of cases, people are asked, what clubs and bars do you go to? And they want to hear a knowledge of, this geography, this urban geography of the gay village. Well, the reality for many claimants, particularly if they're new in Canada, that isn't part of their experience. They don't have the resources, the money, maybe they don't have the connections, maybe they aren't yet at that level of comfort. There are all kinds of reasons. Another dimension of experience that I focus on here is immigration status. People who don't have status are, in many cases, afraid to be out with their sexuality or gender identity. Geographical location, language, so ability in English, race, ethnicity, religion, ability. There's a lot to unpack here, and I don't really do justice to any single one of these, but I will try. So this is sort of, this is what I've been getting at. So these are the kinds of, these are the kinds of images that are very popularized in a city like Toronto. This is the Church Wellesley Gay Village and the image from Gay Pride. And there is an attempt to see this kind of performance of gay identity among claimants, and the ones who fail to demonstrate it have their authenticity called into question. Why is there this anxiety around the authenticity? Well, I think there's sort of a mix of subtle xenophobia and homophobia. This is an object that is difficult to control. Sexuality and gender differences bring up this anxiety and this fear that somebody could fake a claim. So these are taken from, the first one was a big headline in the newspaper, the Toronto Globe and Mail. Mohammed Syed says his sexuality puts his life in danger back home, and he prays that Canada will grant him sanctuary. Trouble is, so many asylum seekers are claiming to be gay when they're not. Now, so many, it doesn't cite statistics. And there seems to be this panic around authenticity for this particular kind of claim that we don't see to the same degree with other bases for refugee claims. So religion, for example, political opinion, nationality, etc. So this refers to the kind of the test of gayness that I talked about. The reporter writes, the copycats may not realize that the IRB expects to see proof and will ask them all manner of questions about their personal lives. Panel members will want to know about their first gay sexual experience, meeting places for gays in their home country, the history of homosexual persecution, and what kind of gay lifestyle they are now leading. This is the story of Alvaro Orozco. Now, happily, he was just granted humanitarian and compassionate status just a few weeks ago, but he was put in in detention in May. After many years of living in limbo, he left his family when he was 12 years old in Nicaragua. He had a father who abused him physically and psychologically because he was effeminate. So the board member in his case, and this is from a 2006 decision, questioned his sexual identity, saying, "I found the claimant's many explanations for why he chose not to pursue same-sex relationships in the U.S. As he alleged it was his intention to do so, and he wanted to do so. He is not a homosexual and fabricated the sexual orientation component to support a non-existent claim for protection in Canada." Now, fortunately, Alvaro became very involved in activism in Toronto around the LGBT Asylum, and also made a lot of connections in the artistic community. And the strength of that support, the mobilization around his case, is likely what led the minister to grant a humanitarian and compassionate claim. Now, he spent, I think from about 1987 to 2005, living illegally in the United States. So again, my point about not being out in that context, partly because of his immigration status. He was working in the underground economy in order to survive. He was reliant on the Seventh-day Adventist Church for social support. And that also came up as, how could you be gay and Seventh-day Adventist? This is another example, a hearing that I sat in on at the IRB in Vancouver in 2004. Amy, this is a pseudonym, was a lesbian of Chinese ethnicity from Malaysia, and she too had spent over 10 years in the US without status. And I should mention that because of an agreement between Canada and the US called the Safe Third Country Agreement, neither one of these people would be eligible to enter Canada now under the law. They would be turned back and told to make a claim in the US. So the board member asked, is it your wish to be in a relationship, or do you want to be alone? Have you done anything to have this wish fulfilled? And if you weren't in a relationship, well, you would be in a different risk category. Amy explained to me that the expectation that she get married was a part of her problem in returning to Malaysia. She couldn't simply return there and live as a single woman, and that wasn't something that the board member appeared to understand. The board member had this rather simplistic idea that she could just walk 4 blocks over in New York City and find a community supporting, start hanging out in gay clubs and reading gay magazines. She didn't speak English, worked in the underground economy, lesbian, not gay. I mean, there are a lot of differences here that shaped her experience. One more thing I want to talk about. How much time do I have? 5 minutes. Okay. In some cases, there is a suggestion that the claimant could return to their country of origin and move within the country of origin and not experience problems there. So perhaps they left because they suffered violence or harassment at the hands of family members. And the board member says, well, you could go back, and in this case, the claimant from Nigeria, you could live in Lagos. The board member suggests he would possibly have to practice discretion with respect to his sexual orientation in Nigeria. The claimant from Sri Lanka, the board member suggested that because the law criminalizing homosexuality was not enforced, the claimant shouldn't have a problem, and there was even a resistance campaign. Well, as you will know, those things, the resistance campaign does not necessarily signal safety in an everyday sense for people. So around this discretion issue, some lawyers have successfully made the case that the need for concealment is itself evidence of persecution. So a lawyer from Toronto argues, what do you mean discreet? Are you telling him that for the rest of his life he has to look over his shoulder and hope nobody finds out that he's gay? Because if they do, he could get jailed or mobbed or killed. I should be able to wear my homosexuality on my sleeve if I choose to and be safe. So there needs to be some ongoing sensitivity, particularly for IRB members who may not have openly queer people in their private lives and who are not familiar or sensitive to those issues. The last thing I'll touch on, I know I said that already, there's always more. Canada recently, it's no longer Bill C-11 because it is becoming law, but they have reformed the refugee system. The possibility that a new timeline that has a more expedited process for an interview and a hearing could negatively impact LGBT claimants, many of whom arrive without a good knowledge or even any awareness of the possibility of making this kind of claim in Canada. This will change those experiences. Another thing that we saw recently in the federal election campaign was the Rainbow Refugee Committee, which was a great group that I worked with while I was living in Vancouver, was offered $100,000 to do private community-led sponsorship. But it seems that the government is rather ambivalent about this. They would prefer to see the system move more towards a reliance on private sponsorship rather than government-assisted refugees. So kind of privatizing of humanitarianism. If you want to go and raise money to bring people to Canada, do it on your own. And the fact that 50 million in cuts were made to immigrant settlement services seems to reinforce that that was their that their agenda is not immigrant and refugee friendly, but that they want to appear gay friendly during the campaign. Last slide is just to say thanks to the Refugee Research Network for bringing me here. I do want to advertise that we have an annotated bibliography on LGBT refugee publications. So these are scholarly publications, although certainly we could expand it to include reports by NGOs as well, as if those are extremely valuable. As it stands so far, it's not complete, but we did make a number of entries, and the idea behind that is that one could read the brief commentary and have access to that research that's being done. So you can reach it at our website. And if you have an entry for an article or some other publication that you would like to see added, please contact me. And thanks for your attention.